The book is called But Didn't You Kill Malcolm? Myth Busting and Propaganda Against the Nation of Islam. Greetings, brother Demetric. How you doing, sir?
My brother, I'm fine by Allah's grace and mercy. How you doing, my brother?
I'm doing just fine, sir. Thank you. I just want to say first and foremost, thank you for joining us on this live. I've been excited all week about this discussion, so I want to get right into it.
Sir.
I want to get right into this. But let me give you a brief introduction. I want to introduce to y'all student minister, Brother Demetric Muhammad, aka the research minister, who has been in the Nation of Islam since 1990. So we're dealing with a very seasoned scholar and a seasoned soldier as well. Brother Demetric is a part of the Nation of Islam's research team, and he's written many books. Some titles include Manhood, Principles, Parables, Concept, and Characteristics from the Holy Quran, which I have a copy of. Who Do They Say I Am? The Vindication of Minister Louis Farrakhan, Hail Elijah, and the book we'll be discussing today is But Didn't You Kill Malcolm? Myth Busting, the Propaganda Against the Nation of Islam. Like I say, first and foremost, thank you for just taking time out of your schedule today. And is there any additional information you want to give to our audience about who you are and where they can, purchase your book?
Well, my brother, I want to first of all thank you so much for the gracious invitation to come on
So,
you tonight to speak with your audience. I appreciate your kind and gracious introduction. I am so used to talking about my teacher, the Minister. I'm always at a loss for saying much about myself, but you did a great job. And I only would add to that is that the viewers can go to our website, researchminister.com, if they would like any of our books. Some of our titles are also available via amazon.com. However, the latest book, But Didn't You Kill Malcolm, is only available on our website, researchminister.com.
thank you, sir. So let's jump right into this right here. First and foremost,
Name, brother, so I can address you
I'm
properly.
sorry, brother Jay. I'm Jay.
Brother
Just
J.
Jay. Yes,
Great.
sir. Yes, sir. Sorry about that.
Yes, sir.
Um, so what was your overall goal for writing this book, and why did you publish this work at this particular time? Because I feel like a work like this probably should have been out 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Why now, and what was the goal for this book?
Well, brother, this is the first published, authorized book from the Nation of Islam that is a response to the assassination of Malcolm X. As you know, we learned in the process of research that there was a desire, or at least an intention and a plan for the Nation of Islam to publish a book on the assassination of Malcolm X, going as far back as to 1970. In plans for such a book or booklet was announced in the Muhammad Speaks newspaper. And so we wanted to, I don't want to say fulfill that desire, because when we began this research, we didn't know anything about it. When we learned about it, that was more or less confirmation that we were kind of on the right page. But you mentioned I came in the nation as a teenager in 1990. And ever since that time, and even more so today, we come to find out that one of the greatest myths, one of the greatest notions that remains in the minds of many people, especially many young people, is this far-flung idea that it is the Nation of Islam that is responsible for the assassination of Malcolm X. And unfortunately, when you look across the horizon, our young people especially are in a condition such that they love and they admire Minister Malcolm, but they are on the fence with respect to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Minister Farrakhan, and the Nation of Islam. And for those that believe that the Nation of Islam killed Malcolm, they don't like the Nation of Islam. And as a result, the very thing that produced what they admire in Malcolm they will not come close enough to benefit from it themselves, despite the fact that our young people are filling up jails, prisons, hospitals, and morgues. And so our argument and our position is that don't just admire Malcolm from afar, but come and drink from the well that Malcolm drank from, and you yourself can become like Brother Malcolm was, a young man or a young woman who is worthy of admiration, love, and respect.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that kind of jumps into my next question, because in the book, you open up in chapter 1 talking about how hip hop and pop culture has been weaponized, and you quote people like Too Short, and you talk about just the astronomical amount of drug references in hip hop music versus pop music. Why did you start the book about the Nation of Islam and the assassination of Malcolm X? Why start with hip hop? What was the importance of starting the book discussing hip hop and the effects that it has on Black youth?
That's a great question, my brother. We wanted to begin the book by framing the book within a context that answers the unspoken question that you just verbalized. Why publish this book now? You know, why make this an issue now? And again, the issue is that I work with our young people on a daily basis. And so I feel that I have an appreciation for the thinking of Black youth. I have an appreciation for, what kind of mental, spiritual, and psychological condition our youth are in. And as a father, and just as a concerned member of the Black community, I'm greatly concerned over, where our young people are headed, because they represent our future. And I know that when I was 15 years old, my father introduced me to the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And unlike many people who come into the nation, I was not in prison. I was not on drugs. I was not someone that came up from the school of hard knocks. I knew both my parents. I did relatively well in school. I went to church on Sunday with my grandparents. However, I still count the Nation of Islam and my membership in the Nation of Islam were making me the man that I am today. That even though I have not yet achieved all of my goals, my being a student of Minister Farrakhan has caused me to live an extraordinary life, has caused me to do things that I never had any idea that I would be doing, and has given to me wisdom with which I can now pass on to my children. And so it has made me a productive citizen within the Black community. It has made me a self-respecting Black man. It has made me love Black women. It has made me respect Black women. It has kept me out of the criminal justice system. It has given me the tools with which I can now build wealth and be prosperous in life. And so I know that in the nation, there's great benefit for our young people. And most people look at our young people, many of whom are in street organizations or gangs, and they want to throw our babies away behind bars, lock them up, throw away the key, and forget about them. But in the Nation of Islam, the nation looks at our young people and say, we have something that can reach them. We have something that can make them fulfill their great and awesome and really their divine God-given potential. So the book is framed by us looking at the condition of our young people, because you'll also note, we talk about in the early pages of the book, how Malcolm in his youth as a boy, his experience in the public school system really kind of prefigured what we call today the school to prison pipeline, because Malcolm wrote that it was his own experience being discouraged from becoming a lawyer, which is what he wanted to be, They caused him mentally to detach from his educational aspirations and pursuits, and he ultimately ended up living a life of crime and violence in the streets. And so it was only until when he met the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that he once again reconnected with his potential as a human being, that he was able to rise from that and come back to that. And even though he did not become necessarily an attorney in the courts of law, he became a great defender of his people. He became a great defender of the truth. And so I want young people, whether you want to join the nation or not, but I want you to understand that the nation is not responsible for the death of Malcolm X. You can feel safe coming closer to the nation, whether you want to join or not. That's a personal choice and a personal decision. But come and get the wisdom of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Whether you want to be a Christian or agnostic or atheist, there's wisdom here that if you implement this wisdom in your life, regardless of where you go in life, this wisdom will help you become a better person, a more successful person, and someone who is doing what every human being on the planet desires to do, and that is to fulfill the potential that we are born with. One of the saddest things we have today, my brother, is the fact that there's so much untapped human potential, especially in the Black community. Our youth are talented, they're creative, they're brilliant, and they're beautiful. But the lifestyle that they live, one based upon the negatives in the environment, does not afford them or not empower them to manifest their potential. You know, it's one thing, Brother Jay, to know that there's oil in the ground or to know that there's gold buried beneath the earth. That's wonderful. However, it's another thing entirely to mine out of the earth those treasures such that you can benefit from them. And so, wonderful to have potential, but we have to have a process to mine out of ourselves that great potential that we were born with. And I respectfully submit that the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad can help any young man or woman do just that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I kind of want to address the elephant in the room, or one of the many elephants, I would say. Whenever I posted the flyer to the Facebook page, to our Instagram page, and whenever we bring up Minister Farrakhan, I feel like our people, they either love the minister or they hate the minister. That's just my opinion. They're just on either one side or the other. Most people who hate the minister will say, I cannot rock with him because Minister Farrakhan, he admitted to killing Malcolm X. When you hear that type of claim, how do you respond to it, and how much truth does that claim hold?
That claim holds no truth at all. You know, as a point of fact, Minister Farrakhan never has admitted to being a part of the assassination of Malcolm X. What Minister Farrakhan said that oftentimes gets twisted, and this came about during an interview with Mike Wallace and Malcolm's eldest daughter, Atala Shabazz, whom the minister knew as a baby, you know, growing up. He said that he apologized that his words could be used to create an atmosphere of hatred toward Malcolm, that ultimately Malcolm was assassinated, and his words, along with the words of others, was a part of the climate and the atmosphere at that time, where members of the Nation of Islam reacted as Malcolm had always reacted. So you have to understand, before Malcolm left the Nation of Islam, there was no greater defender, no more stronger defender, no more ardent defender of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad than was Malcolm X. In fact, he trained the Nation of Islam how to defend the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And that's important because it was not out of jealousy or envy or hatred of Brother Malcolm that Minister Farrakhan wrote harsh words of condemnation of him, or Malcolm's own blood brother Filbert, or other ministers that wrote words condemning Malcolm's words against the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. They were not the aggressors, but they reacted when Malcolm began to slander and scandalize the name of his teacher, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, before the predominant white media. And so something that, again, mind you, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad never did of Brother Malcolm. We should remember, as a point of fact, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave Malcolm X an opportunity to be a leader in the Nation of Islam coming out of prison. A man who didn't have a high school diploma, had no college education, who came right out of prison, and almost immediately the Honorable Elijah Muhammad allowed him to train to become a minister. And even despite the war of words that ensued as a result of the instigation of the FBI, you never heard the Honorable Elijah Muhammad say publicly anything about where he brought Brother Malcolm from. And so Malcolm began to do to his teacher what his teacher did not deserve and had not earned from Brother Malcolm. Others who loved his teacher began to defend the teacher, again, like Malcolm had once been the best example of. And so what the minister has said is that he wrote 4 articles condemning Malcolm's scandalizing of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But here's something very intriguing, Brother Jay. Now, you will hear people say that Minister Farrakhan wrote these words and Malcolm was worthy of death, et cetera, et cetera. But now, during the same time period, when Minister Farrakhan and other members of the nation were chastising Brother Malcolm for his scandalizing of his teacher's good name, you also had the Muhammad Ali, who became the heavyweight champion of the world, saying that Malcolm and anyone else who opposes the messenger of Allah will die. Now, by comparison to what the minister said, what the champ said is much more ominous and foreboding. Minister Farrakhan said he's worthy of death, but he won't because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has faith in Allah for victory over his enemies. Yet we've never heard that Muhammad Ali was a part of those who were helped to assassinate Malcolm X. You know why? Because for the sports industry, Muhammad Ali became a cash cow. Just a few years prior to his death, he sold the naming rights. He sold, I believe, an 80% share in his naming rights for $50 million to the name Muhammad Ali that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave to him. He was cash as clay. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave him the name Muhammad Ali, and he sold the rights, the commercial rights to that for $50 million. And yet we never hear his name even brought up. There was a Middle Eastern Muslim named Abdul Basit Naim, who used to write in the Muhammad Speaks newspaper. He wrote 6 articles condemning Malcolm. You've never heard his name brought up. The fact about it is, Brother Jay, and for 30 years, you never heard anything about Minister Farrakhan being a part of Malcolm's assassination until Minister Farrakhan began to gain momentum in the 80s and 90s, rebuilding the Nation of Islam. And it was in 1994 when the New York Post, Jack Neufeld, and Gabe Pressman, they created the propaganda campaign that Farrakhan killed Malcolm. And for the record, the Nation of Islam sued the New York Post, and the net effect was the New York Post won a summary judgment, but it caused the New York Post to abandon its plan to run a 16-part series blaming Minister Farrakhan for Malcolm's assassination. So again, this is mythology. This is propaganda that unfortunately many of our brothers and sisters who won't open a book, they falsely believe they can learn everything from YouTube clips. They know about important subjects. But I'm here to tell you that the internet is wonderful. It's a great tool. But even in the year 2020, it just does not substitute cracking books and opening books. And so, Brother Jay, that old trite saying rings true once again. If you want to hide something from a black man or a black woman, just put it in a book. And we've got to break that cycle and begin to read and study, because the minister is not a man that is filled with hate. The minister is a man that loved Brother Malcolm. And I just want to say something on that note. You know, people have to understand that the nation, especially at that time, was like a family unit, you know? And, you know, sometimes, Brother Jay, in families, there can be anger, there can be resentment, and sometimes family members can fall out of love with each other. But if there is no interference, if there is no instigators, two people or two members of a family who once loved each other, many times time and space produces a reconciliation. What we have learned through the Freedom of Information Act and the subsequent releasing of the COINTELPRO papers as a result of the church committee hearings in the early 70s. Nobody knew nothing about COINTELPRO in the 60s, in the 50s. It was only made known to the general public in the early 70s. Senator Frank Church in the church committee exposed what J. Edgar Hoover and the CIA was doing in the name of the American people. But they have admitted that they worked to separate Brother Malcolm from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. They have admitted to infiltrating the nation. They have admitted to spying on the nation. They have admitted to working to destroy the nation. And they considered one of the most successful counterintelligence programs was the assassination of Malcolm X. So they have taken credit for it. Now, go back to, just for comparison's sake, when we had 9/11, what were we told? We were told that Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda had taken credit for blowing up the Twin Towers. Nobody even asked. They said, well, y'all took credit for it, we're coming to get you. See? Well, here is our own FBI saying that we take credit for the assassination of Malcolm X. And a proof of that is that the tactics and what they learned through the infiltration of the nation, they went and also used those same tricks to help to destroy Malcolm's ideological children, which were the Black Panther Party. And so they killed the father, they killed the children. They went and they killed Fred Hampton, and I believe Brother Mark Clark, and they worked to destroy the Panthers. J. Edgar Hoover said that the Black Panther Party's free breakfast for children program, the Black Panthers, they loved their people. They loved the community. They saw the little children going to school and falling asleep because their parents didn't have food to give them a hot, nutritious breakfast in the morning. So they established their program, of which J. Edgar Hoover feared it so much. He said it was one of the greatest threats in all of America. And so what you find that they did, not only did they destroy the Black Panthers, but they took the Black Panthers free breakfast program, and then they morphed it and created what became known as Head Start. You might be a little too young, Brother Jay, to remember Head Start. I was a child, they had Head Start, and you could go there and get the hot breakfast on the way to school, etc. So, you know, for those who want to put the blame on the nation, you know, I ask you, what Black group has been strong? What Black group has cared for their people, that did not become the victim of our government, did not become the subject of propaganda and the campaign to discredit its leaders? And that's all that it is now, Brother Jay. Minister Farrakhan, when you have a Black man speaking strong like him, filling up stadiums, Brother Jay, I believe it was in 1992, Minister Farrakhan outdrew the World Series in Atlanta, Georgia. He was speaking in the Georgia Dome. The World Series game was being simultaneously played at another arena across town in Atlanta. And he had more people come out to hear him than went to see the World Series. So you think they're going to allow that man to continue to preach unhindered what he's preaching to black people? So it was during this period of time, the early 90s, that they created this specific propaganda campaign, Farrakhan killed Malcolm X.
Powerful, powerful. For people that are joining in right now, I just want to point this out again. The book we're discussing is But Didn't You Kill Malcolm? Myth Busting, the Propaganda Against the Nation of Islam by Brother Demetric Muhammad. And you can purchase that book at researchminister.com. I want to hop right into chapter 2. You said, I'm quoting you, entertainment as a weapon against the black community is purposed to keep the masses within the black community perpetually distracted under the illusory influence of Hollywood and the music industry. Black youth are controlled by this perverse, weaponized system of entertainment, for it has become the primary source from which their ideas, self-concept, worldview, attitudes, and behaviors have emerged. Can you expound on this statement as it relates to Brother Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam? Because we've seen the Nation of Islam, played out in the Spike Lee movies, in the Godfather of Harlem, and Betty and Coretta. Can you talk about how entertainment has been used as a weapon to frame the Nation of Islam in a certain light?
Sure. There's an old saying, Brother Jay, that nature abhors or hates a vacuum. And it means that whenever there's an emptiness in nature, in the universe moves to fill it with something. So in the absence of truth, falsehood often fills in the gap in our mind and in our thinking when there's an absence of truth. And when you have an environment like we have in American politics, religion, and socio-economic reality, whereby they are constantly working to keep black people from rising, to keep us from achieving our glorious destiny, And I think you referenced me being like a student minister, whatever. So I have to kind of go to the scriptures for a moment. But, in the Bible, it says that the enslaved children of Israel, God had chosen them to be his people, that he would uplift them from a furnace of affliction, from slavery, suffering, and death, and make them the cornerstone people of a brand new world, and would give them a land to inhabit, and that he would give them the oil of joy in exchange for their many years of mourning and suffering. He would give them beauty in exchange for ashes. So now this is talking about a people who were enslaved and in bondage in Egypt. Well, America has been a modern Egypt for us. We have, according to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, a glorious destiny. God is going to uplift us and place us on top of civilization. Well, do you think that those that have historically oppressed us are going to just sit on the sidelines and watch it take place? No, they're going to interfere. They're going to work to sabotage it, you see, because they understand on a certain level our rise to power and predominance in the earth represents their fall. So you're right, my brother. Over many years, the Nation of Islam has been negatively portrayed in the television and film industry. This is designed to demagnetize the nation because, quite frankly, if left alone, The average black man or woman, when they see the Nation of Islam, even if they don't really understand the nation, even if they say, well, you know, I'm a Christian and they don't believe in Jesus, which is false, whatever they say. But most people, if left alone, when they see the nation and what it produces, their heart fills with admiration. Their heart fills with respect. And whenever you respect something, you are just maybe a couple of steps away from loving that thing. You are just maybe a couple of steps away from getting involved with that thing. So they have worked very hard through the television and movie industry to make the nation look like something that we are not. We are not a group of wild-eyed radicals that are trying to subvert the American government. We are not a group of people that are taught to hate white people or to hate Jews. You don't see that we have a record of violence among us. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad simply says to us, when I teach you the truth of the slave masters and their children, you should shun them, not do violence to them, but separate yourself. Because in the Bible, the children of Israel, in order for them to become purified from the sinful way of life that they had enjoyed under Pharaoh and the Egyptians, they needed to separate themselves in order to sanctify themselves. So yes, my brother, throughout the motion picture industry, you have seen the nation negatively portrayed, and this is by design. Certainly, many people have watched the new program, The Godfather of Harlem. And if I am correct, it is preparing for a second season. This program, which takes the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm X, Adam Clayton Powell, and gives them historical makeovers in the name of creative license, is really doing a dangerous work. Because again, many people are not reading the histories of these great men. They will ultimately draw their conclusions about these great men as a result of watching this television program. So we have considered this the deliberate corruption of Black history. And you'll find, Brother Jay, that what is being done to Black leaders today is the same hatchet job, the same slanderous and scandalizing of Black leadership that many of those who under King James of England scandalized the prophets and the messengers of God by adding to their noble name and reputation many kind of sordid and illicit details, such that, you know, the Quran has to proclaim that God's prophets and messengers were sinless. But if you learn about Booker T today, they said, well, Booker T, yeah, he built Tuskegee, but he was an Uncle Tom. If you learn about Dr. King today, they said, well, I know y'all like Dr. King, but that man was cheating on his wife. You learn about Brother Malcolm today, the revisionist historian said, yeah, I know I.C. Davis said Malcolm was our shining Black prince and our Black manhood, but did you know he was a closeted homosexual? Our leaders are being given a dangerous makeover that will cause young people not to view them in the proper light. See, because it's the youth, Brother Jay, that have to study the great ones of the past and the present and say, I'm going to take the baton from Brother Malcolm. I'm going to take the baton from Dr. King. And wherever they left off in the movement, my life will be given to run the next leg in that race until we get the victory of liberation that God has promised our people. But when you make the great ones who struggle and fight for us, when you make them to look immoral and corrupt and crooked and to be turncoats, etc., you rob the babies of what the love and the respect they should have for men and women who they weren't perfect, but even in their imperfection, they gave their life for our people. And they gave their lives so that those who are alive today might pick up where they left off and move us further toward our goal.
They say you're preaching tonight, Brother Demetric.
Stop me, but I get excited about this kind of thing, my brother.
No, that's no problem. I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying this. It's so many things I want to hit on, and I want to point out. This is the research minister. In this book, it's 400 sources in this book. 400. So it's not a movie where there's no creative license. Everything that this man says, you can go to the sources and vet the sources for yourself. You don't have to take his word for it. It's all in the book. You can go through any one of them. And if you have any doubt about what this man is saying right now, it's in the book. And that's why, you know, I want to sit down with authors who have, credible authors who have books like yourself, so that we can have these discussions and so we can go back and do our homework, you know, based on, you know, what's being presented. So, like I said, I'm enjoying this. Now, I want to touch on two more things, and then if we have some time, I want to get some questions from the audience. In a section of your book, you talk about Malcolm's own inner circle exonerating the Nation of Islam. Can you talk about a few of the people who were close to Malcolm who said, hey, the Nation of Islam had nothing to do with the assassination? Can you talk about just a few of those people, you know, who testified on behalf of y'all?
Yes. If you'll know the back cover of the book, I include a quote from Miss Sarah Mitchell. And she is one that I was blessed to meet and interview before she passed away a few years ago. But she was Malcolm's secretary, Malcolm's administrative assistant after he left the nation. So she was not a registered member of the nation. She had never been a registered member of the nation. So she had no ties to the nation such that it would make her want to, you know, say something positive about the nation if it wasn't true. But she wrote a little monograph called Shepherd of the Black Sheep, maybe about 20 or 30 pages, just about her time with Malcolm in the last months of his life. And so she very candidly stated something that we know is true because it harmonizes with what is in the autobiography. In the autobiography of Malcolm X, we read that Malcolm told Alex Haley, the things that are happening to me lately, I'm beginning to believe this is not the Muslims. My death is bigger than the Nation of Islam. And so Ms. Mitchell adds to that and says, yes, he was prepared to say on that day in the Audubon Ballroom, I was wrong in blaming the Nation of Islam for attempting to take my life. He was prepared to say that. He had concluded that the things that were happening to him couldn't be the nation. They had tried to assassinate Malcolm at least 2 times prior to this. Once, as we talk about in the book, police came and they shot up his office in a home that he shared with Brother John X. Simmons and his wife's sister, Minnie X. Simmons, who later became John Ali, the National Secretary of the Nation. Malcolm and his wife and Brother John and his wife, they shared a home together in the early days of their marriage. And police stormed that home, threatened the women and the children, and shot up Malcolm's office. That's the first attempt. Second attempt, Malcolm is in Egypt. And he's poisoned. His stomach had to be pumped in Egypt. And Malcolm said he recognized a waiter in a restaurant in Egypt that he had seen in New York. Wasn't a black man, wasn't a member of the nation. Malcolm also talks about in the autobiography how he was being followed around by a spy in Africa, a man that was a Jewish man that was working for some agency that the man would never identify which agency that he worked for. Malcolm also was scheduled to speak in France, but the French authorities refused to allow Malcolm to get off the plane and to meet with his host and to speak in France. And Malcolm said at that point, he blamed it on the Zionists, you know, or this pro-Israeli group that had been dogging his trail, claiming that he was an anti-Semite. Malcolm's home was firebombed while he and his wife and children were present. And Malcolm would later tell, I believe it was Gordon Parks, he says, I know what the Muslims can do. I know their tactics because I invented most of them, and they wouldn't harm women and children. So as time moved on, the idea in Malcolm's mind was crystallizing. This is something else. Not only do you have Sarah Mitchell, but you had his right-hand man who was over the Muslim Mosque Incorporated, James 67X, who became Abdullah Razak. He states that he believed, based upon his relationship with Malcolm, Malcolm was on his way back to the nation. We talk about others who testify in the book that they traveled throughout Africa with Malcolm, and Malcolm was very uncomfortable being outside the nation, and he was trying to find his way back. We quote Charles 67X, or not Charles 67X, but Charles Kenyatta, who also talk about that it was not the nation. We introduce, not introduce, but we talk about Malcolm's big sister, Ella Collins, who was like a patron and a second mother to Brother Malcolm, who helped finance his Hajj to Mecca. Ella Collins said, my brother told me that if he died, let the world know it was the CIA. Even civil rights activist James Farmer, he's on record stating that weeks before Malcolm was assassinated, he had reached out to the State Department trying to get security. And James Farmer said if this was just something between him and the Muslims, Malcolm never would have reached out to the State Department. And he said that the State Department refused to take Malcolm's request for security seriously. Well, the State Department, they deal in international affairs. They deal in things with foreign governments, etc. And so we bring evidence, and I'm glad you made that point, because there will be those who take issue with me because I'm defending the Nation of Islam. But what I say is this: for 55 years, mainstream authors and media publications have beaten the hell out of the Nation of Islam. And most people have not come to our defense. Not only am I coming to the defense of our beloved nation and its leadership, but I'm presenting sources. And so if you want to argue against what I'm saying, go and buy the book, read the book, deconstruct my arguments, and interrogate my sources. Because when someone publishing a book is different than just bumping your gums. You know, I mean, where I grew up in the streets, we had a saying, you know, about, you know, talking the talk and walking the walk. When someone believes strongly enough in their ideas to publish them, they're presenting them before the world to be scrutinized by the world. And I can tell you I wouldn't do that if I was not confident that we were presenting to the public facts and important facts that not only vindicate the nation, but also vindicate Brother Malcolm. Because as a student of Minister Farrakhan, I can tell you Minister Farrakhan loved Brother Malcolm to this day.
Yes, sir. Let me see where we're at on time. Okay. All right. So I want to talk about, because this is the one topic that I see repeatedly on the page and in the comment section. People want to know about the domestic life of Elijah Muhammad. I guess my question is this. Many people say that the reason Brother Malcolm departed from the Nation of Islam was because of the domestic life of Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So this is kind of a 2-3-part question. Were these secretaries, were they actually his wives? I guess, were they of legal age? And was that the reason Malcolm departed from the Nation of Islam? Because that's the big question everybody wants me to ask you.
Number one, and you know this because you have the book.
I do.
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, at a certain point, Allah commanded him to take wives in a similar way that Allah commanded the former prophets to take wives. See, for some people who are Christians, they may say, well, oh my God, you know, in Islam, a man can have more than one wife. Well, this is true under certain circumstances. However, the Christian can't look down their nose at Muslims because every prophet in the Bible had more than one wife. And some Christian would be surprised that there are religious scholars and historians who have done a close reading of the Gospels, who have said that if you read the Gospels closely, that there is evidence to suggest that even Jesus was married. Moses had more than one wife. Aaron had more than one wife. Abraham had more than one wife. David, oh my God, we don't even need to talk about the wife. And Solomon. So now you may not like a man of God having more than one wife. I say, take that up with God. Now, in this new edition that we are putting out, not a new edition, but there's a couple of things that we are adding in terms of just a few little research tidbits that'll be coming out in the mass printing in a couple of weeks. We share transcripts from the eviction court hearing that Malcolm was subject to in June of 1964. In June of 1964 is really when we see a dramatic shift in the relationship between Malcolm and the Nation of Islam. Malcolm was the minister of Mosque number 7 in New York. And as I already stated, he didn't have a home. He was ripping and running all over the country, helping the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He would troubleshoot problems in other mosques. He was helping to establish other mosques. He was helping to appoint ministers, etc. And so at a certain point, the idea was, Brother Malcolm needs a home. Malcolm goes before the believers and says, you know, because many of the believers didn't have their own home. And if you've ever worked with Black people, you know, it's hard for us to try to do something for you, even if you are a leader, that we don't have ourselves. And Malcolm understood this. He understood the psychology of people very well. So we talk about how Brother James Najee, who was a part of the mosque at that time in New York, he was present when Malcolm pitched the idea to the believers to purchase essentially what's called a parsonage. A parsonage, in many times, it's the little house that's next to the church. That's the house that the minister or the pastor is permitted to live in as long as he is the minister or the pastor of their church. So they purchased a home for the minister of Mosque number 7. And of course, it would be Malcolm's home as long as he was the minister of Mosque number 7. Well, on around March 11th of 1964, Malcolm delivers a press conference saying that I'm leaving the nation. And so, well, I don't know if he thought about it. You know, how we do things, we don't really think it through. But he said, I'm going to form a new organization, 2 new organizations. Well, that meant then that by right, the home that you live in, because if you're not our minister at Mosque number 7, we'll have to get another minister. And he'll need a home. Him and his family will need a home. We've already purchased a home for our minister. And that when he left. So you would think that Malcolm would have understood he would have to vacate it. But he didn't. And so the local mosque evicted him and they had to go to court. This is important context because it was in the transcript of the eviction court that the lawyer begins to ask Brother Malcolm questions about why he was suspended from the ministry. And it was there that Malcolm revealed I was suspended because I revealed to the captain in New York, the secretary in New York, and Minister Lewis of Boston that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had taken on wives other than the one that he had. Not girlfriends, not impregnated teenage secretaries, but wives. You also read about this in Malcolm's autobiography. When he went to Phoenix to talk to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad about the rumors that had been circulating, he said that he had studied this aspect of his life from the perspective of Scripture. Again, one of the points I emphasize, Brother Jay, is this. Malcolm and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Muslims are religious people, spiritual people, acting and operating out of their belief. Now, you may not share that belief, but if you want to understand how they were operating, you have to understand what they were. I should say, we believe. We believe the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is God's messenger. So in order to understand him, we have to study the history of the messengers of God in both the Bible and the Quran. And as already stated, these messengers had wives. Prophet Muhammad in the Holy Quran had wives, you see. And that becomes another issue, because when you want to talk about did Malcolm leave the nation because of the domestic life of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I have to answer no. Because in that press conference where Malcolm stated his reasons for leaving, none of his reasons were because of the domestic life of his teacher. He also wrote his teacher a letter saying that I'm leaving because of internal differences that I had with the officials in the headquarters mosque. But we are being told that he left the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to follow Prophet Muhammad. So again, if he had a problem with a man of God having more than one wife, he would have to give up Islam entirely. He would have to give up Christianity. He would have to give up Judaism, because the Judeo-Christian Islamic prophets, by and large, were men who practiced a limited form of polygamy. Again, Elijah Muhammad versus Prophet Muhammad. Malcolm said Elijah Muhammad had teenage secretaries that he produced children with. Well, do you know, Brother Jay, that many of the critics of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, they charged him with having a wife who was a pre-teenager. Now, the more reputable historians of the life of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, says that Aisha was a young wife, but she was not a preteen. See, but the critics of the prophet say, oh no, she was 7 years old, or 9 years old, 11 years old, etc. So again, polygamy and the youthfulness of a man's wife could not have been a factor in Malcolm's leaving the nation, because he went to practice so-called Sunni Orthodox Islam, where the central figure of Sunni Orthodox Islam is Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who had wives and had a young wife. But the transcript proves that Malcolm knew these were wives. Also, what he told the Honorable Elijah Muhammad when he visited him in Phoenix, he knew they were wives. Also, when you read Louis Lomax's book, To Kill a Black Man, he told Louis Lomax that this is the fulfillment of prophecy, that Mr. Muhammad takes on wives. So this is, again, a part of the propaganda. See, we love Dr. King, but then they introduced something to make us think that Dr. King was immoral, right? We love Brother Malcolm, but then they introduced something to make us think that Malcolm was immoral, right? We love Marcus Garvey, but then they bring up something to make us think Garvey was immoral. That's a part of standard fare for what has become a well-orchestrated and executed character assassination of Black leadership, because we are a people who have been taught and trained not to follow Black leadership. Ask anybody that leads a Black organization. It's difficult getting Black people to support and obey instructions the way that we supported and obeyed instructions coming from our slave masters and our children. When Black leadership is in front of us, we're always second guessing them. When Black leadership in front of us, we always wonder where the money going. When Black leadership is in front of us, Who is his girlfriend? Do we got a chick on the side? You know, so we've been conditioned to look upon our own leadership as suspect. So it become hard for it to lead our people. I don't care if you're leading a choir or a Boy Scout troop. I don't care if you're leading a little league football team. You're going to have difficulty dealing with those of us who are the descendants of the transatlantic slave trade. So no, that was not the reason why Brother Malcolm left. If he had left the Honorable Elijah Muhammad for that, he never could have become a follower of Prophet Muhammad.
You breaking it down, brother. You're breaking it down. I want to see if anybody in the comment section just has a question. Once again, this is Brother Demetric Muhammad. The book is titled, "But Didn't You Kill Malcolm? Myth Busting the Propaganda Against the Nation of Islam." I think we had time for one more question.
Sure.
I'm trying to see if anybody has anything. If not, I have one last question right here. I saw you say this in the speech, and I thought this was very important. It was an election that you had, and you said that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was not a retaliatory type of leader. And I thought it was important that you touched on that, because this wasn't the first time that Elijah Muhammad experienced somebody close to him, somebody that he loved, turn against him. Can you speak to how he handled those situations in the past, and just his character when it came to people turning against him?
Yes, you know, that's a great question, because, see, again, sometimes we bring a secular mind to a spiritual situation. And I understand that, because most of us live a secular life, and we are not always aware of spiritual principles and realities. And it's hard for us sometimes to appreciate when someone is operating from spiritual principles. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad believes that he can save Black people in America. He told Minister Farrakhan once, "Brother, I did not raise you to beat the savage or to kill the savage. I raised you to teach the savage." So over the course of his leadership, he endured the mockery, the ridicule, the rebuke, the rejection, the slander of his people. Why? Because he understood that his people really didn't understand who he was. They didn't really understand what he was trying to do or trying to give them. And his teacher, Master Farrakhan Muhammad, he told the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, "Elijah, take plenty." Take plenty what? Be willing to take plenty abuse from your people. And he demonstrated that. He told Minister Farrakhan, "Brother, I will suffer at Malcolm's mouth as long as Allah permits me to suffer at Malcolm's mouth." He told everybody, "I don't want no harm to come to Brother Malcolm," because as a man who studies the scriptures, he believed that Malcolm would one day return, because that's written of in the scriptures, in the narrative of the prodigal son. The prodigal son took his inheritance and left the father's house and wasted his inheritance. But he came back penitent and humble. And the father was so joyous over the lost son returning to him that he said, "Get my son the finest robe and put the ring on his finger that signifies that he is my son, and kill the fatted calf, and we're going to have a feast, because the son that was lost is now found." So you're right, my brother Jay. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, by the time Malcolm came into the nation in 1952, which he joined in prison in the late 40s, but came out of prison in 52. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad had been on the battlefield for 20 years at that point. And his own brother, when Master Farrakhan Muhammad left, his own brother rose up and opposed him. Some of the early Muslims, they did not like that Master Farrakhan Muhammad had chosen little Elijah. Because at that time, there were men who were like Solomon was during, not Solomon, but like Saul was in comparison to David. According to the religious historians, Saul was a statuesque, athletically built man who was very articulate and had a very powerful presence. So people like Saul. David was small and he was tenderhearted. He played a stringed instrument. He helped tend to sheep, you know. But it was David who was God's choice. So some didn't like that Master Farrakhan Muhammad chose Elijah. So they opposed him. And he never retaliated. He went on the run. And he told Minister Farrakhan, he said, I wanted to tire out my enemies. Hopefully one day I could come back and teach them. And the history says that some of them that opposed him ultimately became followers of his. There are many different episodes that show that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was a man that wanted to save his people. And in order to save his people, he was willing to endure a certain amount of disrespect, a certain amount of rejection. And the public knows this. How does the public know this? Because that's where we get that kind of reaction from. When you see the Muslim brothers, we're in the highways and the byways like Jesus was, selling the Final Call newspaper, selling fruit, trying to teach our people, give our people something that will be beneficial to them. And sometimes they come through and they say, nigga, get off the corner. I don't want none of that Muslim crap. Get out of the way before I run you over. They shake a Bible at us. They do all manner of negative things to us, some of them, not all of them. And our training is say, brother, sister, thank you and have a blessed day. Maybe next time. And sometimes people, when we react like that, they'll drive all the way down the street and turn around and come back and say, brother, I apologize because I didn't have to get like that with you, man. Here, take this. I don't want the paper, but I want to support you all because you were better to me than I were to you. You were more Christian to me than I was to you. See? And so that is the way of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. That is the way of the minister. You know, now we're not going to allow you to physically harm us, but if you say what you want to say, you can cuss us out if you want to. You can oppose us because if you live long enough, we believe you will ultimately come to the conclusion that what we have and what we teach is the truth.
All right. Well, thank you, brother. I think this was such a beautiful dialogue and just much needed for us to have this discussion on this live platform, to hear the facts presented from the Nation of Islam. I want to encourage everybody on this live, get the book. You know, it's researchminister.com. He has several books on there. This one in particular is But Didn't You Kill Malcolm? Myth Busting the Propaganda Against the Nation of Islam. Although we've had an hour-long discussion, I don't even think we touched maybe but about 20-30% of the book, because there's so much more inside this book. We may have to have a second discussion, hopefully, maybe, but it's a truly a phenomenal book. I think anybody who loves Malcolm, and anybody who loves truth, should purchase this book and arm it with yourself. Study it, vet it, do whatever you can, but just come out with more knowledge and a greater perspective on such a sensitive topic, about the Nation of Islam and Malcolm X. Brother Demetric, do you have any closing words that you just want to, leave our viewers with before we close out?
Well, Brother Jay, I want to say thank you. I greatly appreciate the privilege and opportunity to be on your live tonight. And I am certainly willing to come back and do a subsequent conversation about the book. And I just encourage the readers to go to the website, researchminister.com, order the book, and judge for yourself.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. I hope y'all took away just powerful information that y'all can take back and just have a greater perspective. And until next time, we hopefully do this again pretty soon.
Sir.
Peace, peace. Assalamu alaikum to all my brothers.
Sir. Thank
And
you.
we thank y'all. All right.